All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our amazing event hosted by the UCLA Care Office and the UCLA LGBTQ Center, The Power of Makeup. We are really excited to not just have this conversation with you all, but have this conversation with some amazing folks on our panel. And so, before we get started, I do want to make sure that we read some land acknowledgement, go over community agreements, as well as I want to showcase our amazing folks who will be in conversation about the amazing things that they have done. So I will be going over some bios before we jump right in. I do want to have a content warning as we are going to be talking about sexual violence, oppression, the ways different identities are um, are excluded from the conversation around survivorship, healing, and just in general trauma. And so today we're just really excited to dig right in. And so I'll go ahead and start with our land acknowledgement. So as we begin our program today, we would first like to acknowledge the land that UCLA resides on. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of this land, and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory you reside on, and a way of honoring Indigenous people who have been living and working on the land for time immemorial. It's important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside or inhabit the land, and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. As a part of UCLA, a land grant institution, the LGBTQ Campus Resource Center and Care acknowledges the Tongva and Sereno people as the traditional land caretakers of this land.
You want to try now?
We pay our respects to the
I'm working
ancestors,
still, waiting on the
elders,
call to come through, but I wanted to
and
be on the Zoom through UCLA today. It started.
here we go. We pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives in relations past, present, and emerging. And so, just some community agreements to keep in mind when we're having this conversation. We do encourage you to feel free to use the chat for any comments, questions that you may have. But we do want to make sure that we are presenting three key statements that encompass a few ideas from the larger set of agreements that we often hold at the center and at CARE. The first is to take space, make space. Be aware of the space you're taking up and allow others to take more. Additionally, challenge yourself to take more if you wish. This includes ensuring you're speaking from your own experience and not generalizing to others. The second is use inclusive and compassionate language. Please note that racist, transphobic, homophobic, or otherwise intentionally hateful and harmful language will not be tolerated in this space or any space. Finally, we ask that you don't assume identities and pronouns. Ask if you are not sure, and respect and use the names, pronouns, and identities you have been presented with. And so now I am really honored to introduce our amazing panelists. I first want to start with V. Vanessa Duran, better known as V, is a 32-year-old non-binary queer fat femme born and raised in Los Angeles. She has been documenting and sharing her love of makeup through mixed media art and on social media platforms for over 15 years. V's work navigates the complexities of being an autistic, mixed race, disabled glitter goddess via bright and colorful makeup photo collages, educational workshops, photography, paintings, and more. They are the self-published author of two short books released in 2018 titled I Am Still Blooming, a live flower makeup series on healing and becoming, and Makeup and Creative Advice, Tips, and Affirmations, How to Trust Yourself in your Unique Process and Purpose. Recently, we created a YouTube video series called Makeup and Messages from the Universe. where the inseparable and overlapping energies of spirituality, divine purpose, and human connection are honored and celebrated. These pronouns are she, her, they, and them. Next, we have amazing Patrice Oguero. Patrice's pronouns are she, her, hers. And Patrice is the survivor behind the Instagram and Facebook page called Survivors of Color. Amazing page. Through her platform, Patrice shares her story, along with supporting and empowering BIPOC who've experienced sexual and domestic violence. And last but not least is Liz Lopez. Liz, whose pronouns are she and they, was born and raised in South Central LA and is the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. She identifies proudly as a first-generation neuroqueer, lesbian, femme Latinx scholar, practitioner, community-made educator, and creative. She completed her BA in Chicana X and Latinx Studies with a focus on social policy and a minor in education and psychology from the University of California, Davis. She received her MA in higher education and student affairs from the University of San Francisco. Liz currently serves as the program coordinator within the UCLA LGBTQ's Campus Resource Center, where she has the honor to work alongside an exceptional professional and student staff team. Holistically supports and mentors diverse LGBTQ and QT BIPOC UCLA student leaders. A few of her projects include the Black Bruin LGBTQ Gathering, Transfer Pride at Mid-Weekend, planning the annual Take a Drag Pajama Extravaganza, which, please Liz, tell the folks about that when you get a chance. It's amazing. As well as Lavender Graduation. She's working on leading a discussion on destigmatizing mental health for QT BIPOC communities for week 9 and has led previous spaces including COVID-19 and disability justice and Tending to Your Femme. Additionally, co-led a presentation with CARE for the Latinx Admin Weekend on cultivating consent culture within the Latinx community. Through her time in higher education, she has created space for survivors on college campuses through co-planning SAAM programming, Sexual Assault Awareness Month programming, as an undergrad, leading healthy relationship discussion spaces and working closely with transformative justice leaders, including Mia Mingus, to host sexual violence and disability justice advocacy in her prior role. Sorry, letting folks in. Moreover, her research interests include critical race and disability in the academy and the intersections of ethnic and LGBTQ+ studies. This past fall, she also co-authored the introduction to the Peace Review, a journal of social justice, disability, and peace, which discusses disability and peace in the context of a global pandemic uprising. She also most recently received the National New Promising Professional Award through the Consortium of LGBT Higher Ed Professionals. In her free time, she likes to spend time with her partner and her pups named Luna, Dante, and Baldwin. So those are our amazing, amazing panelists, and I'm actually gonna shift it over to our amazing co-host, Liz.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that wonderful intro. And I also want to thank everyone that is here today that took time out of their day to spend time with us and to also dive into this really important topic that is really close to my heart. And so I will just kick off our wonderful panel with our first question, and we'll just jump right in. So the first question for our wonderful panelists, what made you fall in love with makeup?
I guess I can go first. I think that the first time I fell in love with makeup was when I first saw Mrs. Doubtfire when I was a kid, because it was just like my favorite movie ever. And it always blew my mind the way that they could do so many different things with makeup and hair and just like prosthetics and so many different things, and learning that makeup wasn't just, like eyeshadow or touch up or, you know, just a simple compact, but just being like, wait, you can mix these things together and like make a face. That's wild. Like that is so wild, but really cool. Um, but yeah, I think that was the first time. And then also just growing up in the age of growing up in the age of MySpace, where like it just became more socially acceptable to start wearing makeup and like take pictures of it, and it wasn't just like pretty like editorial type makeup, but like just wild colors and beautiful glitters and just like absolutely no rules. That sucked me in, and that's what I started posting pictures of my makeup just in high school in PE class, and I would take my camera because the lighting was great outside. I would take pictures of my makeup, and then later when I got home, posted them on MySpace and like talked to my friends about it. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, and for folks reacting in the comments as well. Yes, please continue to use the chat feature to engage with us and react to what we have to share. Patrice, I know you shared a little bit about maybe being interested in makeup. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so for me, I haven't like been someone, I haven't had much experience with makeup just because I think for me, it's always been more like a confidence thing. And I think as the further I get into my journey, the more that I become interested in it. Like specifically, my oldest sister, she's going through like a divorce. She was in like a narcissistic, abusive relationship, and for her, makeup has been like a big like lifesaver for her. And I can see like the confidence that she's building with her wearing makeup, and just how she's like becoming more comfortable with expressing herself. And that's pretty much has inspired me to get into makeup. I have eczema, so my eczema won't let me be great overall, but I'm trying to work with what I have. But I think that's my biggest thing, and just seeing other people wear makeup and seeing how they, because when you see people wear makeup, they turn into a whole completely different person, which is and that's a great thing, and it allows them to express who they truly feel who they are, and it allows them to just be able to step outside of their comfort zone. And that's something that I really would love to do for myself.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Patrice. I see someone in the comment section. Totally agree. It's a form of art that heals also.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I can just jump in and, share a little bit of how I also, how I came to love makeup. And this is quite an intimate, question for me, especially, just because, when I was younger, I always considered myself a tomboy. So I used to wear like really big hoodies, and I used to wear those etnies. I don't know if anyone remembers that skater brand shoe. Yeah, and so I really wanted to be a skater boy. I was just like, my brothers are skaters, and I want to be a skater. And I kind of had a I really had an experience where I noticed that a lot of women and feminine people in my life were being mistreated and also undervalued. So I think at a very young age, I internalized a lot of that. I was like, okay, so these are the people that are not treated well. So I actually grew an aversion to anything that was classified as feminine. Um, and so I think later on in like growing up, maybe like in middle school, I started to get a bit more curious about, practicing using using makeup. I mean, makeup can be medicine at times if you want to put it like that. Um, but yeah, so I noticed my sister was using mascara and different things, and I became a bit more curious. And I was like, okay, like, she's using makeup. I'm gonna just take a dive and like use a little bit here and there. And so I actually used to steal her makeup. And I know we used to get in so many arguments about it. And she loves me. So she was like, fine, like you can have it. So I started dabbling in using makeup with mascara. And it was that, I don't know if y'all know, but it's like that pink green bottle. I don't remember the brand. It's like hot pink, and is it Maybelline? Yeah. So it was that mascara brand. um, but then yeah, I went off into college, and then I got wrapped up in a really abusive relationship, and I think I started using makeup as a way to like really hide and mask a lot of my feelings. And so I did have an unhealthy relationship with makeup. And I also was like struggling with really bad acne. So I was like, let me just put more makeup on my face. And so I was really going through a lot emotionally, and I really didn't know how to express myself in ways that were healthy. So I just overdid it with the makeup. I was like, let me just pack this foundation on. But you know, later on, I learned to have a bit healthier relationship with makeup. I'm in a better place now. So I think it's definitely been, it's a loaded question for me, but I'm actually really thankful that I'm here now and that I'm able to use makeup as a tool, as someone mentioned in the chat, as a healing and as like a tool of reclamation and empowerment. And so that is definitely my answer to that question. And I see some comments. Thank you for engaging with us. I will say that the panelists, you know, are really much also going to be sharing like very vulnerable experiences with you all. And so as much as you can engage with us as well, like the more comfortable the space will continue to be. We really want to co-create space with you all. So I see here, I was terrified of using makeup for similar reasons. That was my first piece of makeup too. And then I feel that acne sucks, so I don't do a lot of makeup, if any. I felt pressured by my mom to do makeup as a sign to hide myself, hide the scarring, and seem more quote unquote normal. I did none to spite her and to try to let my skin heal. Eventually, I saw makeup as an art with cosplay and see it as an extension of art that I'd like to get better at. Wow. Yeah, I see some snaps. Vanessa, you want to respond to that?
That just got me all excited. But also hearing what you were saying, Liz, about having an unhealthy relationship with makeup at first. And I feel like I went through something very similar. When I was younger, I had horrible cystic acne that was just extremely painful. And every single day at school and whatnot, I felt like I couldn't really just like be a normal student because I was also dealing with endometriosis at such a young age. And that was entirely misunderstood. So along with like chronic illness and growing up in an alcoholic home and dealing with violence in different ways at different points in my life, it went from me wanting to cover everything I hated about myself to me gradually finding joy in the process of trying new things. And yeah, it just reminded me of how we had, you know, makeup counters and like drugstore products. So you either had like super expensive makeup or makeup that was like widely available that you could just, you know, pick up in the checkout line or whatever. And I remember so vividly getting in trouble because my stepmom would give me her like mascara samples of Clinique. And I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm doing something really bad, but like really badass. And I would just like take mascara and whatever kind of like glitter I could find at the time. It was the 90s. So there was glitter everywhere on everything. And I would just like take those items to school, do my makeup, in the morning or whatever, not really knowing how to use it, but just being like, wow, like I don't feel awful at school today because I have glitter on my eyes. Yeah, and then finding healing in that way where it's like completely coming from within myself, and not doing things that other people expected me to do or wanted me to do. And I think the fact that it was completely forbidden for me for me to use makeup. I grew up in a super strict Catholic home. Mom is Mexican, super Catholic. It just was like no, 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 for makeup. So the fact that it was incredibly taboo made me want to explore it more. Yeah, and I loved seeing my mom do her makeup too. Like just seeing her put lip liner on and like come alive, and to see how she just like felt ready for the day, that inspired me, and I wanted that too. Anyway, yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I love the engagement in the chat. Like, same, I remember getting a kid's palette as a young child, but I never once experimented early on because I felt like I would be yelled at for doing it wrong. And same, Mexican Catholic too. I have a hard time seeing myself in the mirror, so I don't put makeup a lot of the time. But when I don't see self-hate in that moment, I can feel beautiful. I feel this level of anger if I don't put makeup perfect. I see all my flaws. Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a lot of nuanced emotions around makeup. That is, yes, that's real. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that it is very, it is some, for some, it's very complicated to, dive into makeup. Others have seen, others really use, makeup as an empowerment tool. And it's just, also upbringings and culture, right? The culture you're raised in also may have some influence in that, even access to items, right? And so I will just say that most of my products come from drugstore. Sometimes I like splurge on Fenty just because I really love Rihanna. But there's also some in access to, right, like utilizing makeup. So hopefully this will maybe get some curiosity going for folks that may have dabbled in makeup or are curious to dabbling in makeup. All right, so we have a few more questions here for our panelists. Yes, Fenty. Okay, second question. Historically, in the feminist movement, makeup is characterized as a tool for the white male gaze. How do queer femmes reclaim that narrative to find empowerment?
I think that might be more of a V question, but for me, I think it's just, I think with that, it's giving them like the opportunity to just like take back the power and take back like any hateful things that have been said, and to kind of throw back in, the white cis male faces, and just to still allow them to be, themselves without having that, without even caring about that judgment. But that's what I would add to it. But I think V would be really great with that.
No, you said it. Does anyone else agree? Any reactions? I really appreciate that point. I see some,
Right on.
yeah.
So I actually have a page from my book that I wanted to share, because I did a look in particular in, I think it was, 2017, March 20th, 2017. So I documented this makeup look that I did, just using flowers from nearby, like literally just driving and being like, oh my God, those pink flowers are stunning. And like having to get them to do a makeup look. But this one specifically is called Femmes Flowers, and I write about this topic in detail. So I hope it's okay if I read this, maybe a few minutes. Yeah, okay, thank you. This look in particular is a tribute to my femme identity. Ironically, I learned to internalize so much shame and self-hate in many of my women's gender and sexuality plus queer studies classes as an undergraduate student and within toxic queer relationships. What I learned in many of my classes was that feminism at large is still only interested in embracing specific identities that are willing to adhere to patriarchal and white supremacist ideas that are considered good, appropriate, powerful, revolutionary, and beautiful, destroying binaries in some ways while simultaneously upholding many inherently transmisogynistic dichotomies. I was told directly and indirectly from peers, friends, and partners that I was subconsciously suffering from my own internalized misogyny. By wearing makeup, dresses, loving the color pink, rejoicing in adornment, and a plethora of other factors that go hand in hand with a feeling of belonging within my own identity. I became so confused, ashamed of myself, and withdrawn from my body, mind, and soul as a result of being made to feel as if I was simply uninformed and unenlightened. And therefore, my perspective, my words, my research, and my work would have little to no value compared to other classmates. On numerous occasions, I was pressured into constantly explaining what gave me the right to identify as genderqueer and why my appearance seemingly and automatically invalidated my sense of self. I quickly learned that fat bodies were not going to be seen as important and valuable, even in this arena. We read many pieces from cis white straight women, white trans men, and queer masculine of center white folks, but almost never any literary work or art from trans women, especially trans women of color, femmes in general, fat people, people with disabilities, or undocumented queers. I am always inadvertently reminded that queerness is only deemed acceptable, important, subversive, powerful, and progressive when masculine of center experiences are prioritized. This rhetoric, especially in academia, continues to depict femininity as weak, submissive, inferior, shameful, degrading, and incapable of having the power to be reclaimed or empowering in any way. This mentality is dangerous and only aids in perpetuating violence against our most vulnerable populations, such as trans women, especially Black trans women, and women of color, sex workers, non-binary people, fat and low-income femmes, women and femmes with disabilities, poor women, incarcerated and undocumented people, and so forth. I didn't come into embracing, understanding, and reclaiming my genderqueer femme identity until I had experienced an enormous amount of femmephobia, fat phobia, sexual violence, and shaming in many different forms after coming out. I rejected the term femme for many years based on the sole qualifier that I wore makeup and was constantly mistaken for being straight and gender conforming. Femme is inherently queer, continuously challenging the status quo in a number of magical, beautiful, messy, deconstructed, and uplifting ways. Identifying personally and politically as a fat, queer Chicana femme and lesbian has helped me reestablish meaning in my life by allowing me to reclaim all of the parts of myself that have always been defined by and looked down on by others. Being femme makes me feel empowered, autonomous, and proud. Femme is not weakness or inferiority. It is whatever the hell you want it to be. It's whatever the hell you want it to be and feel. Reclaiming and embracing my love for makeup, goddess worship, vanity, and being present within my mind, body, and soul, artistically and spiritually, has allowed me to delve so deep into practicing self-love, self-care, adornment, and channeling new means of healing and reinventing myself. I celebrate and decorate my body on my own terms and for my own pleasure and joy. I'm an excessive bitch who loves the heaviest of makeup looks while also choosing to be barefaced and full of cystic acne scars 98% of the time. I don't need anyone's permission to exist as I am.
Can we just get some heart reacts?
And here's the look again, not this one. This one.
Oh, there's so, that's so beautiful. It's like vibrant purples and magentas. Is that the colors those are the colors I'm picking up.
Let me see if I can get this closer.
So beautiful. Look at the eyebrow game.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Yeah, we have some love in the chat too. Let's see, I agree, I felt that. I always restate that non-binary people do not owe anyone androgyny. Go off V, yes, yes. This is giving me chills. I've never worn the color pink. Now I bounce around town in pink, rose gold, holographic roller skates. I can hardly recognize myself. I'm like, what? This is beautiful, heart. It's the getting rid of stereotypes, reclaiming identity, and picking up that crown because no one can take it from us. This is amazing. You are giving all of the nuance. Thank you so much for sharing. This is what we mean by we need intersectionality, especially in feminist spaces. As a queer person myself, I've noticed that in my exploration and self-expression here on campus away from an abusive household, that my own friends, other queer individuals, wanted to police my self-expression to be more masculine, more butch, but I don't feel that it's me. I know they mean well with wanting me to be open to expression, but the alternate felt just as forced as the tenets of femininity. I felt I had to try to maintain at home. I'm okay with being feminine, but on my own terms. Thank you for sharing this. Hearts, that was amazing. All the love. I love
that was a lot
this.
to take in.
How are you responding, Patrice?
It was a lot to take in for me because I think just listening to V speak, you can just feel all the emotion and just you can kind of have an idea of how much you know they have they've experienced, and I think it's just I don't know, it's nice to be able to hear someone's story and to kind of witness how they've been like overcoming those obstacles that they faced. And I think just everything was just like I'm just a little speechless because it was just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Patrice. And V, your words really did struck a chord for many of us in the space. And I will say, as a self-identifying femme, myself, and also exploring more of an agender identity, it's definitely been a journey to be able to reclaim makeup, and as one of the tools that I use to really heal and also be creative and also to share intimate parts of myself to the world, right? Because it is like you said, it's a conscious decision that we make to show up as ourselves authentically in the spaces that we navigate. And we can just shut that down real quick too if we want to. So I hear this consciousness of deciding every day to put on makeup or not. I hear the layers of like fat phobia and also like transphobia and these expectations from like queer, even within queer communities, that just because you're really hyper femme or femme on the spectrum of femme, that you're not queer enough or you're not non-binary enough. I see someone in the chat, right, was like, you know, no one knows androgyny to non-binary identities and experiences. So I really, if I could, I would give you a hug if you would welcome that. But just know that I really appreciate what you shared as well. And I mean, your book looks amazing too, and your art is really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with us so intimately. I see comments. Yeah,
Thank you
it's,
so much for holding
yeah.
that space for me. I really appreciate it. I'm all like blushing. I live for sharing makeup with other femmes, and like when I'm in this kind of community and we can just like celebrate each other, it is magical. Like that's where healing happens, and it grows and it flourishes and it continues, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And for us to be able to show up as femme, right, in whatever ways that means for us, I think that's really sacred too, right? Like, I think it's about embracing that sacredness. And I recognize that these markers also are oftentimes target for violence and be, as you shared. And so what does that look like, right, for like survivors and folks that use makeup as tools, as a reclamation to being like, I'm not gonna minimize myself, right? I'm gonna do this for me. And what if it is a way to really continue to tap into our body mind and to really reclaim what was taken or potentially taken from those violent experiences. Let's see. I want to just say I really appreciate the engagement in the chat as well. Identifying as queer femme was revolutionary for me, allowing me to locate and express my femininity beyond heteronormative expectations and performing for the male gaze. There is joy and play and authenticity and humor in my femme expression, now with makeup and fashion. Yes, I love that so much. Whew. All right, we're just diving right in. So I'm gonna just help us by moving along to the next question. So what does survivor mean for you? And what has helped you in your process of healing?
For me, being a survivor is just, I don't know, I feel like being a survivor is just something that somebody that's just allowing themselves to figure out their way after experiencing such a violent experience or experiences. They're just trying to find their way in the world, because for a lot of us, so many things are taken away from us when we experience any sort of violence. And at least for me, it was with my situation, because I was in an abusive relationship. It was abuse in every way besides physical. So during the time, um, I didn't think it was a big deal because it wasn't like, I was never hit or anything like that, but it was, obviously it was still bad. And I think, during that time I was always talked down to, and I was always made to feel like I wasn't like worthy, and being made to feel like, I mean, I guess like one example was like me being compared to like he was like comparing me to like cars. He was like, you'll never get a guy who's like a Bentley, like, you'll get a guy that's like, Honda status or whatever. Like, and just thinking about those things, it kind of, those are things I'm personally still like, those words you realize, but you realize words are powerful. You don't, like, how do I say this? I feel like you don't realize how powerful words are until you look back and you remember, and those words come back into your mind. And so I think with healing, it's been a journey of trying to, relearn to trust myself and relearn to love myself, because, when I started, Survivors of Color, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just know I needed to find a community of people who have an idea of what I'm going through, you know, where I don't feel like I'm crazy. And like one thing I had to ask myself was, what is it going to take for you to, feel at whole with yourself again, or what is it going to take for you to, be okay with where you're at? And I think for me, it's just trying to find those. Sorry, I guess trying to find those little things that will make me feel like, I guess, like regain that confidence that I lost, or regain, just that power that I lost. And I think just doing, I don't know, I feel like just doing things that make you feel happy. And I think with, like, I understand, one thing I'm learning is that healing isn't something that happens overnight, something that, it's a journey that you're going to be on forever, unfortunately. But I think and I feel like you don't realize how much improvement you made until you realize certain things don't trigger you anymore. Like for me, like a trigger for me, like it was the song, what is it called? It's called Hey There Delilah. Um, that song I couldn't listen to for years, because that was a song that was dedicated to me during that relationship, but that relationship caused me a lot of harm. And so whenever I would hear it, like at, like Food for Less, I would just leave. And I could even stay. And I realized, like, one day I caught myself singing a song, and I had to stop myself. I'm like, are you really singing this song? Like, does it really not, is it, is it really not that, it does not trigger you as much as it does? So I think overall with healing is just trying to find what works for you in order for you to get to a place where you just feel, love, basically where you feel at home with yourself, and where you feel just comfortable with who you are, and where you just feel, I guess, worthy. So I think, yeah.
Thank you, Patrice. I know it's hard sometimes to share, and I just want to thank you for just sharing so intimately about your experience. And I know it's not an easy thing to do. And I will also say that, being in this community, in this space, is also part of my healing too. And I know we talked about this a little bit offline, Patrice. You're like, stepping out of our comfort zone, some ways is part of that healing, to be able to share our truths, and to find our voice, whatever form that is, through social media, which is, what the tool that you have and have cultivated, and to not shy away from sharing resources and information and experiences. So thank you for sharing. Um, let me see, there's some comments in the chat. Totally agree. It's hard to know and realize how far one has come sometimes. Yes, especially because healing isn't linear. Yeah, especially even as everyone else sees it in you, but at times you don't in yourself. It takes a lot more effort to acknowledge process. Yes. And someone said, thank you for sharing. Would you like to share, V?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Patrice, for sharing. And this is just reminding me of like so many things, but in many really beautiful ways, and how there's always been just like a really exciting way for me to track my progress, and that's just whatever I need it to mean in whatever moment at whatever point in my life. And that's where I really loved challenging myself to do different things with makeup, and also allowing myself to fail, because the more I fail, the more I learn. And then the more I learn, the more I want to practice. And the more I want to practice, the more I'm suddenly okay with spending, time alone by myself without feeling anxious or lost or just hating myself in the entire world, So yeah, just hearing that word progress is just, it inspires me to think about how I used to be so mad at myself for not for not being good at applying lashes. I still struggle, or like doing my eyeliner or whatever. But those are such small things in comparison to the immense trauma and like heaviness of the emotions that I'm bringing into a space where I'm doing my makeup. So with this intensity, I feel like when I do my makeup, it's like a meditation, because I feel like normal meditation doesn't really work for me. My mind just wanders when I close my eyes and like try to envision silence. That doesn't work for me. So what did work for me and what I started gravitating towards was doing my makeup and finding new things to do every single time that I had the energy to do my makeup. And also, I feel like there's so many things that I wanted to say and I lost my train of thought. But yeah, thinking about survivorship and what that means. And I began to feel so empowered wearing makeup when I read work from Black Femmes. Black Femmes like Kim Cattrall Milan, formerly, and Sonia Renee Taylor, and hearing Kim Cattrall talking about being femme on purpose, that changed everything for me. Like I was in just the worst place ever in my life. This was like 2012-ish. And it was like the last semester of my undergrad. And my endometriosis had gotten just a million times worse. And I, had also just gotten out of a really toxic and abusive relationship and had dealt with sexual assault just in the midst of all of that. And then when I heard Kim talking about how makeup and femininity was empowering for her and speaking in front of thousands of people at Slut Walk Toronto, that just like, it gave me butterflies, it gave me chills, it gave me, just like permission to just be without having to explain myself, without having to apologize for being here, taking up time to do my makeup, and not really addressing the clutter in the house or doing things that I thought I should be doing, but actually giving myself the time and space to indulge in hearing other femmes talking about what reclaiming femininity means to them. Yeah, that literally changed everything. And also Sonia Renee Taylor, who is the creator of the movement, The Body Is Not an Apology. I heard Sonia saying this poem or, reading this poem for the first time in DC when I had gone there for a conference, and just hearing it in person was life-changing. Just those words, "the body is not an apology." And like, that also was just a complete mind shift, to actually think, holy shit, like I don't have to hate myself. I don't have to hate myself to comfort others. I don't have to make myself small and apologize for existing and not talk about anything out of fear or shame. And those things are all okay too, and those things are important. And like having the space to process all the things, grief, suicidal ideation, and just traumatic memories. Being able to do my makeup put me in a space where I could actually confront these things, because my brain never shuts off. It's like, it's just always doing something, which is kind of annoying. But when I allowed myself to tap into that, and when I still do, I feel like I'm able to speak directly to my higher power, to my spirit guides, my ancestors, God, the universe, everything. And I'm able to see a much bigger picture instead of just me in this one identity doing a thing that I love, but seeing how spirit really was like allowing me to open my heart to creating community with people who understood, the things that I had experienced, even horrific things, like to know that you can connect with people who are also suffering and maybe not talking about it or too afraid to talk about it, and being able to like break those barriers in a safe space, whatever that means for you and that person, or people. That's revolutionary. So yeah, the reason why I brought up Kim and Sonia is basically because it's not just an individual thing. It is literally a commitment to community. And that is what survivorship is for me. That's what saved me, like not just me and myself and my own things, but really allowing myself to be so vulnerable and open to learning more. And I think what scared me for a long time was learning, or thinking like, maybe I would love myself so much someday that like scared me, or like maybe I would heal and I wouldn't know who I am, or like, who even am I without trauma? But those things don't exist, at least for me, on like a specific timeline. It's just, I feel like I'm talking for just forever. Yeah, I don't know, just making connections between different realities, different points in time, as like my past self, future self, and whatnot, and like reconnecting in a multi-dimensional type of way, with all the scary questions and all the scary thoughts is, yeah, it's powerful. And this is not to like, glamorize trauma and be like, it's so pretty, just put makeup on, it's wonderful, you'll feel great, because healing is actually the worst fucking feeling ever. Like, it is, like Patrice said, a never ending process. And having to accept that also meant for me learning to love healing, learning to love to practice understanding myself or seeing who I am without all of these identities outside of myself. Does that make any sense? I don't know if that's.
Yes.
I'm just gonna step back.
I mean, I will say that we want you to share as much as, as much as you'd like. I think this is a space to do so. And we want to, yeah, like you're dropping gems, that's the comments, right? Yes, community is everything, right? Folks are like, yeah, it's such a great book. Community really is revolutionary. Def checking out that book, thanks. I felt that Who Am I Without Trauma? So people are really responding to you and really appreciate what you have shared. Healing is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Y'all are really dropping gems. Yep, I say as I look into making my research topic about generational trauma. Yes, you are. Yeah, just need to take deep breaths sometimes, I think that's also a part of that. And I think when I think about this question in particular, there's so many things that also jump out at me in terms of my healing process, but mostly has really taught me to be fully committed to myself. I think above, and that is part of being in community, a part of me challenging myself to share my truths and to create spaces like this, right? So I do practice many different things, right? So it's not really like a one straight cut thing that I do and it's like completely done and healed. I'm hearing this message of like healing isn't linear, and I really would want us to continue to move away from that because there shouldn't be really any hierarchy of healing. That feels very, very like white supremacist to me. Anything that's on a hierarchy, right, just doesn't feel good to me. And so I also saw folks in the chat saying healing is really what we make of it as we're experiencing the world and different relationships and our environments. And things that I have really dedicated myself to doing is really identifying the relationships in my life that reciprocate love and care. And sometimes that's really hard to do when we're in the mix of something, navigating something really difficult. That also means putting like really, really thoughtful boundaries on who I want to engage with and who I don't want to engage with. And at some point in my life, I didn't have that option, right? Because I was in an abusive relationship for about 4 years. And it really is taxing. It's really taxing to the body, mind. And I say that term very intentionally because I think even with the trauma that we experience, we become so dissociated from our own bodies. And I experienced that myself. I became so dissociated from myself that it kind of felt like I was floating the whole time, like not really experiencing things, not being present, because I just didn't want to sit with myself. I didn't want to sit with my experience and those feelings of shame of like, why am I still with this person? So I think it's really has been a way, like healing has been a way to really reground myself and to reclaim myself, reclaim my body. And makeup is one of those tools that I utilize too to be creative. And I also don't want to also say that makeup will heal everything, like one thing will heal everything. And though I will say that makeup has been one of those processes, as I'm hearing also like a ritual for me as well. So I really want to affirm that for folks in the space too, that it has been, it's made me look at myself entirely for who I am. And I also do a lot of readings. Like I I sometimes don't want to intellectualize the spaces, but I think we're in a space where this is part of that is like also learning And I was really, really struck by a lot of the disability justice literature that really forces us to like really think through the connection between our body, our mind, and thinking critically about diverse bodies and how we experience the world as disabled people. So I do have PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And I think that reading, like, there's folks that I can think of, like Mia Mingus and Lakshmi, and a couple of other folks. There's this book or this PDF called like The Revolution Starts at Home, and just diving into like literature that like that was very affirming to my experience of just having experienced trauma. And it's been a journey. It's never ending, as folks have restated. But I'm committed to myself, and I think that's the ultimate thing for me. All right. Yes, so we're just taking deep breaths. Whew. All right. Thank y'all for also receiving my truths. This is also pushing me out of my own comfort zone, as you can tell. All right, I'm going to move us right along to the last question. What does survivorship and healing mean to you? So it we already tapped into that, but maybe if y'all wanted to continue to dive into that, and also maybe identify key ways, practices that you've also continued to utilize in your healing. And these could be non-traditional ways, because I know that there's very traditional ways to access care, which is like therapy, which is something I've also engaged with. And also, are there more so non-traditional ways, like, makeup and other forms of expression or tools that you've maybe utilized that were helpful for you? I know that was like a long-winded question. Sorry, y'all.
Sorry.
Oh, you can totally go.
I think what's been helping for me, like with my healing journey, has been like, for me, music has been a big thing for me. Like just listening to music. I don't want to explain other than like, because I think music has been like my savior in a way. Just because there's so many things that you can relate to with music, with so many different genres, and like I literally have a playlist for every single mood that I'm in. Like if I'm ever feeling overwhelmed, or if I'm having a moment where I'm like having like a flashback, I have like those songs I listen to that kind of help me like get back up to get to that moment where I'm okay with myself again. I think also I've just been trying to take time to like take up space for myself and being more assertive with my words. And I think another helpful thing has been being able to say no to people and not even having like an extra explanation other than no, like no, because I know like I thought it through my head and that's what my response is. And I think for me with healing, it's been a big process, because I'm still learning what works best for me. Okay, honey, go get you one. Yeah, but I'm still learning like what works best for me with healing, because there's so many different ways, and I feel like healing is basically whatever you need it to be, whatever you want it to be. And I think for me, like just finding this community has been a big help for me, because I have so many people who I can turn to whenever I'm unsure about something, or whenever I'm having a moment where I'm not, a moment where I just need like that space to just, to just express what I'm feeling, and just being able to like receive that feedback from other people. And like overall, this community it's very diverse. There's so many different people that I've met who they have different stories, but they haven't like they get me, like they get, what I'm feeling. They get like my emotions, and it's nice being able to, you tell somebody something, and you don't even have to go into detail. It's just like, I get it. Like, I know exactly how you feel. You know what I mean? And I think that it's I think just finding your community has been, it's like it's a blessing because not a lot of us get like that support from like family and friends. And so when you have people that you've never met before, people that you may have never even thought of even befriending, like in your former life, your normal life, you'd be surprised at the amount of great and long lasting relationships that come from it. And I think community it's everything. I think that's been my biggest help.
Thank you, Patrice. V, I see you also wanted to share, and I see folks engaging in the chat too. Thank you all so much for being vulnerable and sharing. Go ahead, V.
Yeah, I love what Patrice was saying about finding community, intentionally creating community, connecting with your people instead of, just trying to explain to everyone, like, this is why I do this and it makes me feel empowered, but I know that you think whatever. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like, I want everyone to understand why I do what I do, because I don't care if anyone understands it. What I care about are the people who innately have that same soul connection to healing on many different levels, because I see my makeup and time to do my makeup as, like I was saying earlier, time to connect to source, to connect to spirit. And since I was a kid, I, could hear spirit telling me clearly that there was a reason why I was put in this situation in my life where I experience trauma on trauma, because I was put here to understand generational trauma that had affected especially the all of the Mexican women in my family, especially having to do with sexual assault, sexual violence, and knowing that that has taken place within family for so long. I could cope in different ways, and I did try to cope in many different ways. But when I began to do my makeup and I connected with something that actually like made me feel like my soul was connecting to my purpose, that changed everything, because I feel like so many different creative outlets are, gateways, openings to new portals of creativity and blessings, and connections to yourself, and also ancestors and people in your community and friends. And yeah, I just was thinking about how I think in like 2014, I did a presentation with some femmes of color at USC, just putting together a presentation about femmes of color and makeup, and talking about all the different things that we're talking about now. And that was so amazing and still is, because I know I feel this way and probably many other people feel this way, but I feel like it's my responsibility to create the spaces that I didn't have access to, especially as, you know, a baby queer, a baby femme, you know, just like not understanding anything. And even thinking, you know, when I come out, people are going to be nice to me and they're going to understand me and I'm going to connect with other people and we're going to be, you know, equal, the same. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, but it doesn't have to remain stagnant and awful and terrible. Like there's so many incredibly creative ways to confront white supremacy by connecting with community that has purposely, you know, been separated from different communities, different identities, as if things can't overlap. I hope that's making sense. But we created a hashtag called Femmes of Color Visibility so that people could use the hashtag on Instagram and we could find each other, you know, and like we would say, like, tell your friends about it. You feel free to use the hashtag. If you want to post a selfie, and like for years, we've literally just been like checking the hashtag. I don't know if anyone else still does it. I do it sometimes, but I check the hashtag and it is still so awesome to see so many different femmes from so many different places, like other countries. Like this just started in like an LA thing, and then it became bigger, and then you meet more people who are also like-minded. And to have such a deep connection with people on social media, on a platform that, you know, cultivates discussions and holding space for one another, that is so fucking powerful. And I feel like that's the entire point of femme identity, you know, is to completely unravel the status quo, unravel everything about, you know, oppressive systems of power and how they exist and how they're maintained, and why we don't need to fucking maintain them. Why I don't need to explain to, you know, my mask of center classmates that just were disgusted by me calling myself genderqueer, and as if it's just an exclusive club or whatever. I don't have to explain, you know, who I am to anyone. And finding people who also feel that way is just, my God, that is life-changing. Like that is, I feel like that's what keeps me alive. Like that's what makes me want to be alive, because I want to see my friends thriving, not just surviving, not just getting through. and that's also valid, you know, that things change from day to day, from second to second, you know, and just holding space for the people that I care about, even if I've never met them before in person, but still the community that I've found through Tumblr and Instagram specifically has just been amazing. And I've been able to connect with the LA Spoonie Collective, you know, a collective of people with disabilities who also love makeup. Like it's amazing. It's beautiful. And we don't all look the same way. We don't all express ourselves the same way. Some people are artists and love to draw. Some people love you know, wearing their favorite lipstick, and like that is empowerment. That is beauty. That is, you know, your armor. And there's just so many different ways to celebrate not just art, but what connects you to your purpose on earth in this lifetime. And I feel like healing has the ability to transcend time and space, if that makes any sense. And if it doesn't make sense, that it still makes sense to me. But yeah, the healing that we do here in this lifetime or in these moments, whether they're small or big, or we think that they're important or not important, all of the love that we give to ourselves, I feel like, is healing the generations before us. Yeah, and not wanting history to repeat itself, or to feel too ashamed to talk, or too ashamed to write these books that I convinced myself not to do for a while. It's not just healing for me, it is literally healing on a mass scale, like on a global scale. It doesn't just like begin here and I know a few friends. Like, this is literally how I feel like so many survivors all over the world are weaving this web of, you know, support and love, and without judgment, you know, and like wanting to make space for other people who heal in different ways or similar ways. And yeah, it's just, it's a beautiful thing on a small scale and on a much larger one as well.
Thank you, V. That was so beautifully put. If you could drop that hashtag in the chat, that would be great. And I know, Patrice, you also have your own platform too. So if you could please also put your, this is a space to hype you both up, because you all both have done really amazing work, right? So we really want to give you all this platform to showcase that. So if y'all would be willing to share your info in the chat, please feel free to do so. And now, just for the sake of time, we are opening up the discussion for any questions that y'all may have for the panelists here, including, of course, including myself, for the next maybe 8 minutes. Any questions? Y'all could drop them in the chat or unmute yourself if whatever feels most comfortable for you. I'm going to drop my handle as well. I'm being a little vulnerable here, thanks to the community here as well, that, you know, we have cultivated something so beautiful. Any questions? Any also reflections or thoughts from you all? I did not expect to shed so many tears. I could sincerely feel the love in this space, and I'm inspired by the beautiful courage you all showed tonight. Femmes have my heart forever. Elizabeth did drop a form there as well, post-program feedback form. I enjoyed everything in this. It was beautiful. I'm just glad to know that there is a community here. Hashtag Femmes of Color Visibility. And thank you all for the space. I really needed it after the month I've had. I love you all, though we just met. Same. Oh, yes. I see so much strength, you know, in that vulnerability too. Thank you so much for creating and holding this space, so much insight.
Yeah, bringing up vulnerability, just wanting to amplify that, and how much work it takes to be vulnerable with yourself, to even, you know, begin to process trauma and grief and flashbacks and PTSD and so many other things that are just like compounded on top of one another and that don't exist, you know, just in a neatly packed little way, but with the intersecting identities we that we belong to, that we are proud of, and that, yeah, and that showing up for ourselves and showing up for one another is vulnerability, and vulnerability leads to healing, creativity, love, and just so many different things, you know, like, yeah, I don't know.
Thank
I
you,
could
V.
literally talk about this forever, so I'm not going to.
Thank you, V. Patrice, any closing thoughts on your end before we pass it back to Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me and just creating the space for all of us to kind of, you know, share our experiences and like learn from one another. And I feel like you don't realize how much these kind of like conversations are helpful. You don't realize how much you needed to have these conversations until you have it. And so I think, you know, I'm just happy to be able to be a part of this, and I hope that we can create some kind of like a bigger community for us to, you know, stay in contact and just be able to, you know, reach out whenever we need to. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Patrice. And thank you, V, too, as well. This is just such a magical space that we've created today. And we co-created it, right? We were willing to engage, which is the key to creating community. And so now I'll pass it back to Elizabeth for the closing remarks.
All right, y'all. I don't have anything to say after those amazing that amazing discussion and those closing remarks that y'all had. So I just want to say, emphasize what everybody has already said. Thank you so much for being vulnerable in this space. We can feel it, and I needed this community. And so thank you for everyone who is not just here, but has engaged in sharing parts of our lives that sometimes we don't often share with others. And especially within, the work that we do. I think it's so important for us to sometimes create spaces for us queer femmes, and however that looks like, because of many of the issues that you mentioned. And so I'm glad we were able to curate this space and to have that discussion, a nuanced discussion around just gender and sexuality and all those things. So yes, thank you all for coming. Thank you for helping us close out Sexual Assault Awareness Month on a very awesome, positive, amazing note. Again, shout out to our amazing panelists, Patrice, B, and Liz. And yes, follow all these amazing folks on Instagram, on Facebook, and support, folks that are doing this work. And so thank you for coming, and hope you all have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take good care.